Hello, and welcome to My Career in Data, a podcast where we discuss with industry leaders and experts how they have built their careers. I am your host, Shannon Kemp, and today we're talking to Ben Schein at Domo.
With a robust catalog of courses offered on demand and industry-leading live online sessions throughout the year, the Dataversity Training Center is your launchpad for career success. Browse the complete catalog at training.dataversity.net and use code DVTalks for 20% off your purchase.
Hello and welcome. My name is Shannon Kemp, and I'm the Chief Digital Officer at Dataversity, and this is My Career in Data, a Dataversity Talks podcast dedicated to learning from those who have careers in data management, to understand how they got there, and to be talking with people who make those careers a little bit easier. To keep up to date in the latest in data management education, go to dataversity.net/subscribe. Today, we are joined by Ben Schein, the Senior Vice President of Product at Domo. And normally, this is where a podcast host would read a short bio of the guest, but in this podcast, your bio is what we're here to talk about. Ben, hello and welcome.
Thanks, Shannon. Really happy to be here, talk about data careers, data journeys, all that fun stuff.
You know, when we started this podcast, you were one of the first people that I thought of, because when I first met you, your title was a Vice President of Data Curiosity. We had a great conversation around that. So I'm really excited to dive into this. And now, congratulations on your promotion. You're the Senior Vice President of Product at Domo. So let's start with, what is Domo and what is it that you're currently doing?
So Domo, really talk about Domo as a data experience platform, right? So we're creating bespoke, meaningful, relevant data experiences for our users, for people everywhere. And really those experiences to us should be, unlocking data, not just for a data scientist or someone with data in their title, but really that they should be experiences that everyone in the organization, right? I think there's lots of studies and research you can look at that, 5 or 10% of people actually use data in an organization. And our goal is that our data experiences are accessible to everyone, even if you're on a factory floor or in a retail outlet or a coffee hut or whatever it is. That data and an experience with data is impactful, and ultimately the reason we want that is because we want everyone to have an impact on their business or their organization, right? A positive impact, an exponential impact, if you do that correctly. And so that's sort of our overall vision, is to create those data experiences so that everyone can have a positive impact on their business. All that being said, that sounds great and it's aspirational. I get to see that a lot with our customers. The day-to-day can certainly be a little different. I used to joke that I could never give up the data curiosity title because it was too good of an intro and a hook, and all those things. And for a long time I did it, and it really let me expand as a thought leader around data, as a coach and a mentor to our customer base, as an advisor and an input to our product teams and how we're developing things. But the chance in January to really take over our overall product strategy, including product management and UX, really was too good of a chance, and to do those things, to create those great data experiences. And so while I still have that love for the title, I do joke that I feel like before people listen to me and now they listen to me, right? It's a different kind of listen. Not that they weren't, I had an input, but now I have a lot more say. And so day to day, what does that mean? Where do I see my job and my role in the company? I think a lot of times it's about connecting dots, right? There's lots of different work going on, in different areas of our product, and the different components that make up this data experience platform, whether it's, Magic ETL, or it's the data sets or data ingestion or integration or visualization or app building. And so a lot of times I'm trying to have that big picture and say, well, how do these things connect? How do I, maybe solve multiple problems in one way so we can be efficient with our resources? And so some of that's just my own observation and my own, I use the product. I actually checked when I took this job in January, and I have the card in Domo somewhere, but in my time at Target before Domo and at Domo, I've created almost over 18,000 different objects, visualizations, data sets, data transformations. And so I use it. And so I bring that perspective as a practitioner to the product strategy. But also part of my job is how do we listen to the signal? How do we listen to customers, listen to users, both their actual voice and their sort of derived voice in the data that we have about what they're doing, right? How do we let that be the fuel, but not always it's not always about doing exactly what someone's asking. It's okay, well, what's the pain? What's the friction? Let me understand that underlying friction, and then let me connect those dots and say, well, these 5 frictions that customers might be articulating in different ways actually can be solved together holistically by reducing this friction, creating a better experience, letting people have that business impact. And so that's a lot of fun. I mean, there's frustrating moments for sure, and a lot of different people and stakeholders to try to balance, whether it's industry analysts versus our own internal teams versus our customers and our leadership and marketing. But it's a lot of fun day to day too, most days at least.
I love it. That is so great. And we'll come back to that a little bit in a moment because to your uses of data, that's very interesting. But let's back up a little bit to begin with. And so tell me, Ben, when you were in elementary school, was this the dream? Did you dream that I'm going to grow up and be the senior VP of product?
So definitely wasn't the dream. I will say I always was probably a little dorky. One of the things that comes to mind from that time period is I was obsessed with airports and designs and like looking at airport maps. And when we go to the airport, like how are the gates arranged? And well, in Atlanta, they do a train, and at Dulles, they, experimented with the mobile lounges and what did that work? And so I don't know if I ever thought I would really grow up and design airports, but that was one of the things I was really passionate about sports and other things. But there probably was a better shot that I could become an airport designer than like a Major League Baseball player. But it was, but I do think like it does come down to like, how do you organize people? How do you organize the complex system? Those kinds of challenges, those kinds of problems still are what excite me. But I never got to, although now I do travel a lot for my job. So I also am an expert on Delta Sky Clubs and which gate is, my wife makes fun of me that I know which gate is better at the Minneapolis airport if you're trying to get there quickly and stuff like that. But I never got to actually design the airport, at least not yet. I shouldn't say never, right?
I think, that goes to the point, like from very, very young, curiosity was instilled within you. Like that was a big, huge thing.
Yeah, no, it definitely was. And I think, I wanted more, and it was such an esoteric topic. It's not like there were tons of books about airports, right? But I probably have to ask I should have asked my mother when I saw this question to see if she remembers like how much. I feel like I remember having like brochures and like I wanted to engage and understand it, right?
That's fascinating. I love that. So tell me then, how did that evolve? And when you got in, as you got older and started selecting your topics in school, what it changed and what did you start studying?
Yeah, I mean, so it's funny because I don't think I certainly don't have a very traditional background. I would, probably say I've never taken really a full college course on data specifically. I mean, maybe adjacent economics or statistics. And in undergrad, I studied philosophy, politics, and economics. Sort of like good pre-law. I did a minor in like urban public policy. So again, like there are these themes of like complex systems, like a city is a complex system. I went to Penn in West Philly, which was, a city with the good and bad, and how does crime interact and all those things. And so I really enjoyed that. And it's funny though, and I think a theme for me is just, you have to take the opportunities that come. It's not a linear path. And so I actually, my junior year in college, I spent a semester in Washington, D.C. And so you had classes down there and then you were supposed to get an internship. And I had a couple offers to, intern on the Hill, International Relations Committee, or just more traditional things. And then through some sort of random connections, I had an offer to work in the national campaign to prevent teen pregnancy, which was very different. I think they paid, which was nice, but that wasn't the main driver. It was just sort of like, this is something really different, right? And so I'm like, oh, well, maybe I should try something different. Not just everyone's going to go work on the Hill. This is an advocacy group, still very Washington based, tied into policy. It was one of the only men that I think were in the small office. And they actually were doing a ton of really interesting work around media, like working with Buffy the Vampire Slayer to send good messages around safe sex and things like that. But through that, I met a communications company in Philadelphia with a Wharton alum. It started an African-American Wharton alum that sort of specialized in urban communication. So they did everything from like focus groups for like, Ice-T's movies to public health campaigns. And so that's how they were connected to the national campaign to prevent teen pregnancy. And so again, that's what happens, right? You take a chance, you do something different, you meet someone else. I worked for them my senior year. I went and worked for them full time for a little bit after I graduated, and they had a small database system that they were using, right? And so I started using the data and understand their different, contacts for like HIV education campaigns and all this stuff. And I slowly, and it's actually twice in my career, I left for a vendor, separated by 20 years, right? And so when I was 21, 22, I I think it's sort of like that moment where like when you start calling support and you know more than the support person, right? I ate it up. I knew how to use the system. It was called MSAS, Member Service Action System, built on Interbase and Borland technology, which was very old technology, but powerful. And I was building reports and doing groupings and all the stuff you do with data, right? And so I ended up leaving. I think especially when you leave, passionate leaders, there was definitely some. When I was 21, there was some yelling between two founders of a small tech startup and a small communication startup, and negotiations of how I would still help, which is flattering. But so that's really how I got to data, was this Euclid technology that had like an association management software. And I started using, we moved from Interbase, which was sort of an open source database, to SQL Server was like our big upgrade. And so I started learning how to build views and store procedures. And as a small company, you needed to be scrappy, right? You couldn't afford to like Deloitte or someone to like, just bill people to make things bespoke every time you did it. And so, I just started doing that. And then, it's, 20 years later, I did the same thing where I was at Target and I was a customer of Domo, and I sort of decided I had this vision for this practice around data curiosity, and I made the leap as well. And I think a lot of it for me in my time at Target too, I always talk about, like, if you're a consumer of the technology, you end up pushing the envelope. And at some point you want to have a seat at the table and build bigger envelopes, right? And so I was able to do that at Target. Even within Target moving, I was originally in finance, and then I moved over to more of the data and analytics team. And in between there, I got my MBA, met a girl from Minnesota, moved to Minnesota to get my MBA, and then stayed here. So like, but I think the big theme is, to me, is being open to new experiences, being curious, right? But not always being so linear that like I must do A, B, and C. I must be a data analyst at Google, then I must do this and I must do that. I have to do A, B, and C to become head of product. Well, I didn't have a linear path to that either. It's like do interesting things, meet interesting people. And I think the last thing is have really good leaders and bosses. I think I've been lucky over those years to have people I could trust, that could protect me sometimes when I needed protecting, that would, encourage my curiosity and my exploration and my growth. And I think without those people, probably could count on one hand that list of people, but it makes a big difference.
I would agree with that. Absolutely.
Did you know Dataversity offers free monthly webinar series and online conferences throughout the year? Stay in the loop when you follow us on Twitter @Dataversity or on Instagram @Dataversity_edu. Get podcast extras and bonus content when you subscribe to our channel at youtube.com/Dataversity.
And again, what a testament to you and your curiosity. It's not many people who would try those new things, go, hey, I want to just do something different. I want to push myself. I want to explore. And that's a really great story to tell, and a great way to
sometimes
approach it. Yeah.
sometimes the universe is just sort of telling you something, right? Whether it's
Mhm.
the nudge because it was paid versus not paid, or the fact
Yeah.
that, in finance at Target, I was doing fine, but it felt like I was always pushing, right? Like sort of chafing against the technology. And so, the universe tells you things, and then things present themselves and you have to grab them. And if you miss them, you might end up on a much different path.
Yeah, it's so true. So, what is your definition of data and how do you work with it?
Yeah. So thinking about this one, I think, and at the core to me, data is an observation, right? It's an
Mhm.
observation of the world that is recorded somehow. And I'm often observing many things. Sometimes the things that I observe or notice,
Mhm.
um, my wife, I don't understand, why do you care about that? But whether it's how a restaurant is trying to organize, or what's going on, even how people are collecting data in the world. So some bathrooms have like the happy face, smiley, sad face. Is this clean or not, right? To try to get more data inputs. And so at the core, I think we walk through life with a lot of information around us, a lot of things happening. Some of that's recorded, some of it's not. A lot more of it is recorded than it used to be. If you think about cell phones, or if I think about we have like Life 360 to track our kids. My oldest is 15. His best friend just got his license. He wants to go for a ride, and I can look and see, oh, he went to Culver's to get ice cream, right? I mean, that's data that didn't exist for my parents, right? Or if existed for like the Navy 30 years ago as a multi-billion-dollar investment. And so we do have more and more of that data, which in some ways makes the job of working with data harder, right? And I think one of the inflection points for me at Domo, and you can see it if you look at the data of like what I created. Like when I first when I first joined Domo, like I created, but like I wasn't creating a lot of content, around data at Domo. And then when COVID hit, that really changed some of my approach and my direct, right. And so we sort of
Mhm.
had a SWAT team to create a COVID tracker. And in the early days, we were getting, tens of thousands of users every hour, because we were compiling data from John Hopkins and other places. We're updating more frequently, and how do we blend it? And so that's a lot of those that created those kinds of data experiences, right? Which I talked about for Domo, but this was like a real relevant way to talk about what we did. And I think I learned a lot too of like, relevant data that makes sense to people, is a way to tell my own journey. It's a way to tell the journey of Domo and what we do. And so we've gone on from, using COVID data to inflation data to even, when Taylor Swift had all top 10 songs on the Billboard charts, we did a blog post I did around the Billboard charts, and who had anyone ever done that before? And how do you look at, past people, and how many songs do they have? They're all using like there's actually a Python plugin for the Billboard charts. If anyone wants to do it, I have the code out on GitHub. But all of that to me, again, that sort of that need, and we do this all in a Domo and Data blog. Like it does speak to like there's information out there, there's observations. How do I make sense of it? How do I make it meaningful, right? Because you could have data, there's lots of data. How do I make it meaningful? I think is where it gets really powerful and interesting, and where I get excited.
What a great way to use data for, during COVID and
Yeah.
to make a difference. Yeah. Um, so tell me, Ben, do you see the importance of data management and the number of jobs working with data increasing or decreasing over the next 10 years, and why?
So I I think overall it will increase. I think it'll change though too, what it means and how you do it, right? Certainly, even in the last 5 months with ChatGPT and LLMs, it has changed a lot of how we think about what's possible. But there's still sort of that human element of how do you guide, a ChatGPT, or how do I use ChatGPT to give me code as a starting point, and then I make those last, 10% of adjustments that sort of do that. And so I think there still will be that human element. I think we continue to automate more and more, and so I think purely the collection of data, or the pure management of data will, and maybe, and who knows how it sort of that could become more and more automated, and and maybe a little bit more simple, but and it always has, right? I think it's like, every year things get different and changes. But I think that challenge of, you know, how do I get value out of the data? How do I get business impact? How do I create an experience that everyone wants with the data? Will continue to be there. And that's part of where ChatGPT, somewhat randomly, they didn't know, they sort of released it to the wild in November as like almost a last ditch effort after some more bespoke efforts to train specific models for accounting or something like that. But why it's like it resonates is because it is so simple and so usable. And so I think finding ways to do that, finding ways, becoming experts on how to prompt a large language model in a way that's responsible. How do you get the right data out of it? How do you organize your data in a way that can be leveraged by a plugin or by a large language model? I think all of that is only going to expand. The people who actually can access it might change, right? So before you maybe needed to go to a data expert to access it. Now I'm relying on a data expert to help translate and mold and deliver it in a manner that I can use. So, I might not need them to answer my question, but I need them to make sure that my question is answerable.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, makes sense a lot. And so then what advice would you give to people looking to get into a career in data management?
Yeah, so I think there's a few things. I think one is, obviously be curious. I have to say that. But I think when certainly from a career perspective, it's, thinking about how do you explore new technology. Think about what your approach is. That's something I ask people a lot is like, I don't care as much about which technology, but I want to know, how do you learn, right? How did you learn something brand new? How did you change the way you did things? Because that's the only thing I know for sure is that there'll continue to be new technology that you need to understand, whether it's Python or R or GPT or, vector databases or whatever it is. And so the more that you build that muscle and show to me, so, well, I guess sometimes I'm hiring for an expertise, I more want to hire for someone who shows me they can adapt, right? And so if you've gotten really good at one technology but can never tell me a story about when you had to explore a new technology from scratch, except for that one technology, look, there might be times when you need that or you need a specialist. But I think having that, it's not lack of specialization, but having that ability to pick up a new specialty, I think is really big, and being able to do that. And then look, I think the other thing, like I sort of said before, is, like keep your eyes open for the different pathway, right? Like you don't know that linear path, and keep your eyes open for who you're working with and for, because end of the day, like that's really what makes, at least from a career perspective, that makes a difference. And who are you spending time with? Who are you traveling with? Who are you in the trenches with if there's a big deadline or a project? And so all of that, it's really hard if you don't trust and respect the people you work with. And so, I would pick certainly better people, more interesting problems over title and pay right away. But those things matter. We all want to make more money. We all want a nice title. It's nice, all those things. But I think you have to sort of balance between them.
Oh, I agree with that. That's great advice. And, along with your curiosity, it sounds like there's also some advice to be uncomfortable. It's okay to be
Yes.
uncomfortable, to push yourself
Yeah.
in new situations, new environments, new things. So,
Yeah.
which, yeah, really great
Yeah.
message. Yeah.
I think a lot of it, I often talk, a lot of the research actually around curiosity overall, there's been Harvard, business review articles and stuff, like talks about the concept of intellectual humility.
Mm.
Right. And I think that's something I try to go on. And it's hard because I know a lot. I think I know a lot. I think I'm right a lot. But sometimes you just have to make sure like you're letting out your guard, you're questioning whether someone else knows more than you, right? Like I'm not always the opposite of intellectual hubris. I'm open to learning something new. I'm listening to someone else who might have a different opinion or different approach. And it doesn't mean like you're perfect. There's plenty of times when I'm sure my team or my customers would tell you I have exercised intellectual hubris in my interactions. But again, if you can check yourself and reset to that, I think it is that openness, the humility to be able to know what you don't know or to want to learn something new. Because if you're not comfortable with that ambiguity, if you're not comfortable with that being humble, it gets really hard to learn because like it's hard, right? It is uncomfortable, like you said. And so if you're not willing to do that, you're going to sort of have an issue learning something new.
Such great advice all the way around, and not just career advice, I think great life advice.
Yeah.
So indeed, and I can attest, I love my job and my colleagues, and Tony Shaw is one of the best human beings that we've, to work for. But we've all been there, right, with those bad managers, and that just, you're right, it can make life miserable, and it's so important, your choices. So, and if you follow your passion, follow that curiosity, like you say, the salary and titles will come. Yeah,
I believe so.
Well, Ben, so I would be remiss though if I didn't ask how, if people wanted to learn more about Domo, how would they find out?
So you certainly can always find me on LinkedIn or email me or direct message me if you have questions, or if you're a customer, you have product feedback. I'm always open to that. Or it's ben.schein@Domo. But on our website, domo.com, we actually did a lot of revamping at part of our user conference in March in terms of focusing around these data experiences, being clear around the architecture, walkthroughs of different parts of the platform and whatnot. The Domo data blog has some, if you want to explore how Taylor Swift is doing now, or Miley Cyrus had like some record of #1 hits in a row or whatever. So all that is out there, but we're always looking for good data conversations and help people on their own curiosity journeys, right? What are they trying to learn?
So fun. It's so fun. Well, Ben, thank you so much for taking time to be with us today. And as to all of our listeners out there, if you'd like to keep up to date in the latest in podcasts and the latest in data management education, you may go to dataversity.net/subscribe. Until next time. Thank you for listening to Dataversity Talks, a podcast brought to you by Dataversity. Subscribe to our newsletter for podcast updates and information about our free educational webinars at dataversity.net/subscribe.